All right, so welcome to week 2 of the Effects Toolkit podcast. On today's episode, we have a special guest, Josh Jensen. I've worked with Josh for over the past 3 years, mostly as a field agent in his agency. And today we're going to be talking about his journey in insurance and at the end specifically how Effects Toolkit, the software, has impacted how he's changed his business during the pandemic. Want to say hi, Josh?
Yeah, thanks for having me on Joe, Frankie. Glad to be here. It's a great product we've been using.
Yeah, we're glad that you're actually our number one user in terms of the total quotes ran. So what you can start with, I guess, is how you got into insurance. I think it was 8 years ago now. Can you tell us kind of how that happened?
Yeah, I mean, I got into the business actually 9 years ago. I responded to an ad on Craigslist that said looking for military and athletic backgrounds. So that's really kind of, I had a guy by the name of Brian Curran reach out to me, and he had me get on a call. And I listened to the call, and I went up to a hotel. It was one of those hotel meeting type of insurance companies, the Amway style. And I went to a hotel meeting up in Boston, and met some people that they're making a lot of money. They showed me a lead system, and I went and got my license about 2 weeks later. And I guess the rest is history. I mean, I've jumped around with companies before, and ended up where I'm at now, and started my own insurance agency, senior benefits agency.
So I think near the end when we were at our old IMO, I think you were doing a little over $6 million a year, was it, in production for the field agency?
Yeah, it was about 4.5 million we did our last year, and we were pacing a lot higher the following year. Then kind of COVID happened, some other stuff, but.
So yeah, so when we transitioned from COVID, you opened your call center in Massachusetts, right? You have your own.
Yep, we have it. It's been a learning curve, definitely, because we're all so I'm working with states that we're not used to, with carriers that we're not necessarily used to. Not to mention, I went from a transition of being in the field a lot, and then to not being in the field at all, building an agency with a select few carriers that I knew. And then when we kind of made this transition, it's a lot different, I think, from being in the field compared to being in the call center, and it has its hiccups. I think we've kind of we're learning things. I'm sure you guys there in Delaware are learning new things too, and going from a field sales mentality to a telesales mentality, and understanding what carriers are going to accept, and that's kind of, I think, where the toolkits really come in handy with us really well, is because we've had, there with the COVID restrictions, with, okay, like we're picking up some of these off carriers that we're not used to, and not every carrier's in every state. Not to mention, we're dealing with certain underwriting that I can't always check, and I got new agents that are on here that they don't know anything about underwriting. And I mean, instead of pausing the phone, and saying, okay, hold on 1 second, Ms. Mary, and then they're asking me, and waiting for me to get an answer, they can just go right to the software. And it's really, really shortened the learning curve. I think with a new agent, especially when it comes to underwriting. Now, yeah, there's also, it is a software program. So, there is, little things that we know that we can get pushed through and stuff like that. But I mean, for the most part, it's helped us out a lot. Obviously you guys are, if we find an error or glitch in there, and we report it to you guys, it gets fixed very fast, which I think is huge, because, it's, you don't have to wait till a new patch comes out or a bug or whatever. So you're always running into an issue. It runs very fast, efficient. I'm kind of excited what you guys got going on with the CRM system coming up, but we love it. It makes it easier. It just, the learning curve is everything. Before, we used to have all these pieces of paper and sheets that we're pulling up for cheat sheets. We'd have to train the agents how to do the cheat sheets. Not all of them would use the cheat sheets. Not all of them would necessarily call to get help while they're in the house. They couldn't find how to do an e-app. or they didn't know what the website was or the process. A lot of them would write a carrier not understanding that they're going to take a hit in commission, and they find out later, a few days later, when their paycheck is a lot less than what they thought because they had to write graded with this carrier. But if they would have went graded with this carrier, it would have saved them a lot of money, or they would have made a lot more money. And then not to mention you're writing somebody who's got direct express or has a debit card, things like that. It eliminates a lot of things. And then, from the underwriting process, and then you just have the quotes that are right there. We used to have to go through a 2-step process. We'd have to check a cheat sheet based on the medications. We'd have to look, manually do it. And then we'd have to go to a website and quote and get the different quotes. Then we'd have to go to we'd have to look up what the website is to run the e-app. And with this, it's just all in one. You put all the information in for the client, the height, the weight, smoker, non-smoker, the medications, the health issues, and then it gives you it does the underwriting for you. And then, when you're ready, you can compare the quotes, get 3 quotes for them right then and there. It makes it so much easier. And then you just click on a button and it takes you right to the website to do the e-app. So
I think one thing when we were back at Ephes, I think one of the tough things because I was developing this most of the time, I had no idea about telesales at all, or even, anything else. But at Ephes, we always had, it was a very high level of support because you have the agent hotline, you have everyone plugged in, you have people like, you can just call someone like you and you get the underwriting. So I think for probably the first 5 months when we were developing this, it was tougher before we started converting to this. Cause you do business the same way I do, is you just buy the leads, buy the darn leads and go work them. And it's going to work out. If you have a problem, just call your upline, call someone, and it'll work. But I think that I've really seen that, my dad, brand new, he started a month and a half ago. Now he's doing about $20,000-$30,000 a month. And I don't have to be over his shoulder. He's not thumbing through cheat sheets. He's a pretty, person who wants to do things the right way. He just plugs in, spits out the answer. He knows if his commission's going to get it. If the client asks, he's writing MM graded. So do I get full day one coverage? He can just mouse over and see what the parameters are. So I think that, I agree with you. I think that it takes a lot of the training time out. We have 2 new people in today.
Oh, absolutely. And I think what it does is it eliminates the underwriting training. Now, you still want to, what we're doing in here in the field is we're still training on the underwriting for things to look for. We still have, I got on a board, I got, all right, be on the lookout for these medications, just because I think it's good to know, because, as great as the software is, I think it's always great to have the ability to be able to, already know. Like, you don't have to know, like, if somebody's on lisinopril or they take, Maprazil for heartburn, like knowing that, and that's kind of what we train to save time. Like, all right, I understand, like, you're on these medications, and we call them the don't really matter medications, or the over 50 meds. You turn 50, your doctor puts you on a blood pressure, a cholesterol pill, something for your heartburn, maybe something for your thyroid, which you don't really need to enter into the quota just to save time. You're really looking for more of the dual purpose medication, or, the serious meds, the meds that affect the organs, the heart, the liver, the kidneys, the lungs, and that's, I think that's why, it's important.
Josh, when you were a field agent, did you not find any need for software? It was when you came to telesales that it became a real virtue for you. Is that right?
I think it was as far as when I was in the field, would this software have been great when I was in the field? Absolutely. I think really what it was is when I was in the field, we had, like I said, we had cheat sheets, we had pieces of paper that we would reference, and I think this has kind of just made it more easy because you can just type some stuff in real quick and just find it, compared to having it printed out and looking through it. But then you also got to think, like, the cheat sheets we had too, like, weren't all right. Well, if they're on this medication for this, but then you had to reference 4 different cheat sheets and verify, okay, all right, the cheat sheet says I should write this company. I have 2 carriers where I can write this company, company A, company B. All right, I'll just go with company A. It's a few bucks cheaper. And then what you realize is that company B, if I would have wrote company B, I might not have taken a commission hit, and being an experienced agent, I knew a lot of this stuff already, but for new agents, it could cost them a lot of money.
And that was the same thing I referenced previously as one of the first Royal Neighbors policies I wrote. I was like 82 years old back when they were taking people over 75, and I took a 40% hit. And I remember I called them the day after I got my commission, and for me it was fine. It was just annoying. But I think the statistic is something like 8 or 9 out of every 10 new agents fail. I think that's probably a big reason. Is that little things like that, they can add up and suddenly you're out of the business. Because for at least for most of us, there's cost, there's closing percentages you have to hit to stay solvent, really. And I think that's something that I've seen the value more as we built it, is just catching the little things. Mark was submitting an application 10 minutes ago, putting gabapentin for pain and then metformin for diabetes. In his mind, he doesn't yet connect the neuropathy, but because it popped up, now he's going to know going forward. Now he even commented, I didn't even know, but it popped right up. And
and I think it allows you to also ask about it as well. And that might be kind of one of those things, maybe an idea you could put on there. Like if it, because that is a question that we always ask. Like if they put on diabetes, or they're on metformin, it asks like, it does bring it up if you do the conditions, but it will say like diabetic with no complications or with complications.
Well, yeah, like what it does now is it'll match, like if you put in like nerve pain, like baclofen or something like that, and then you match it up to like a diabetic med, no complications, the quota will pop up because of a combination of medications. It indicates diabetic neuropathy. You can remove that indication if you want, but it'll remind you. It's for I forget what the exact specifics are, but like nerve pain, diabetic, no complications, like Lyrica, stuff like that. If you match up, even if you put in the conditions differently, it'll still suggest it, just to make sure to ask you to remind. And I think that's the most important part of the software, I think, is that the reminders. And CHF, we have a few in there too. Then the why button. Like we don't just want to tell people a result, because like you said, I don't want to have Mark or anyone else in here rely. I don't want it to be a crutch. I want it to be a tool. So that's why I encourage all of our users, really, whenever you get a result, mouse over that little question mark. It'll tell you why the decision is the way it is. That's probably the most important part of the software. You want to learn it yourself, and you want to be able to do as much as you can yourself, but have the software, the little nitpicky things that change. Royal Neighbors no longer offers graded because of COVID. They're not doing applications over 75, stuff like that. And then for certain medications, earlier today, I actually referenced this in our podcast last week, but Mark was doing an application. The guy told him he was taking Entresto, but it's for atrial fibrillation, whereas it's heart failure. Like there's no question about it. And the toolkit only recommended it's heart failure. So stuff like that, it's helpful. And that's also a learning tool. It's not our software doesn't show you 50 different reasons you can take a medication if the medication can only be taken for this number of things. So that's another thing that we try to do well, is we don't want to present the user with a laundry list of things that it could be taken for, when in reality, the carrier is going to see it one or two.
Absolutely. And, and I don't think in any situation it's going to be perfect. I mean, there's certain medications that, like, you're right, like it might say it's for this, but if you call and explain it to certain carriers,
and that's why we have the red dot system, is like for Sentinel. I'm sure you're aware, when we were using Sentinel more so a few weeks ago, they have their likely rated list where it can be rated, but in our experience, it's been like 50-50. We'll submit an application. Sometimes it goes through, regardless of the reason. Sometimes it won't. So what we do in the software for a few companies, GCU has the same like manual referral list. Frank, I think the Sentinel, and I think there might be one other one that we have in there right now. I think it's Oxford, isn't it? And we have,
I remember specifically.
Yeah, we've 3 or 4 where instead of our software telling you one way or the other, because you can't say, it'll just like show a little indicator that, this might be likely rated or it might be referred, just so you know. But you're right, Josh. There's no magical formula until you submit it. There's just no way to know. But you can put yourself in the best
and sometimes then you run an MIB, or then you run a script check and an MIB check, and there's these medications that we had yesterday. We had a guy ran an app, and the guy was like, "Yeah, I don't take any medications," and it comes up to Nepazil and memantine for Alzheimer's. I was like, "Well, yeah."
He forgot.
He probably forgot that he was on this, and the agent's like, Jesus. And we're like, yeah. And it was tough, it's like, all right, well, let's go back to the quota, so it's, it really is. But I think, it's helped, especially with neophyte agents. It's such a big thing, because before we used to have to get them to do an online training where they reference the cheat sheets. Half the people would do the training, half people would understand it. I mean, we forget 80% of what we learned the next day anyways. So it's like they're always forgetting stuff. And I remember having agents who wouldn't even reach out to me. They were in a house and they, would just leave the house without writing an app, and they're like, oh yeah, I got to write them this carrier anyways because they're direct express. I'm like, well, that carrier that you're going to write doesn't even take direct express, and it kind of eliminates that. Now it's still, you're going to have your user error. Anyway, so.
Do you think that this over-reliance on technology, do you think it's over-reliance on technology, or do you think that it's inevitable that there has to be a software solution for this industry? Just because
I would say, to counter your question, it's under-reliance. Like, more of what Josh is saying is that training course, I wouldn't even consider it technology. It's something that we had new agents do, and it's like a 30-minute thing, and then they would never look at it again. Like, what Josh is saying is we didn't have any technology at all. We had like a phone hotline, which is more than most places could say, but what he's saying is that there's
and you're still having you still have the human element too, because you don't know. And as great as that tool was, you never know who's going to pick up the phone and really know what they're going to talk about. Sometimes you would just get a manager on the phone that was just short with people, like, yeah, write them so-and-so, and it was just not the right answer. Or they would say, write this carrier, write that carrier.
Well, chat room is the same way, isn't it? You can ask something in a chat room. You're sitting face to face with a client or you don't have time to wait 20, who knows if you even get an answer. So I think that's another part of it, is that Frankie, our quotes run in under 1.5 seconds, all of our quotes. That was really important.
Under a second now.
We pushed a speed update, and before that, it was only like 3 or 4 seconds, but that 3 to 4 seconds was unacceptable to us because we wanted to make it it's every second is important, whether you're in person or not. That's another thing that was important to us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, compared to trying to get somebody on the phone and validating it, you could be waiting minutes or, 20 minutes before somebody gets back to you or something like that. So it definitely, I would take 3 seconds compared to, 10 minutes to get an answer, but that's how it is. It's made a huge difference. Especially, like I said, when you're dealing with 35 different states and you don't know every carrier. Like if I was to say, all right, you got this person and we write a lot of RNA, for example, there's certain states that RNA is just not available in, but you're like, if I get somebody in Massachusetts, for example, it's like, okay, why RNA or AMAM, which is our go-to. I had an agent yesterday writing somebody that is in the state of Maine. Maine, AMAM, or Occidental are not available. And I didn't know, because we're like, yeah, go AMAM. She's like, it's not available in AMAM. I'm like, are you sure? And we go on, we check the quoter tool, and then I even went on AMAM's site. Oh, yeah, you're right. It's not. So we had to pivot to Liberty Bankers. And it's things like that you didn't know. And that's what I think the quoter is really good for. Because we were still be able to underwrite it properly and then write the app.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal of what we really want to do. And to tie back to your point with all of like our feedback, we have a whole docket of probably 50 things, and we almost got a little too over aggressive a few days ago. But every single piece of feedback that we get, as long as it's not something like we got in several months ago, we had someone say that it would be cool if you guys put in like what Liberty Bankers does with the face-to-face pre-check, where it'll give you a decision beforehand. There's no way for us to do that. But outside of stuff like that, we implement everything that we get. If it is feasible, we will put it in, like, period. So that's something that we really pride ourselves on, is that you can look at our software, how it looked 3 months ago, pretty different from the way it is today. And we continue to update. Even yesterday, Josh, you said that the Innovative Solutions American Amicable product has no comp hit. We're pushing that probably tomorrow. We'll have it in there. So stuff like that. And we think that it's always important that we convey to people who use our software who might want to use it, is that it's not a stagnant product. You're paying us every month for a reason. We're going to update and improve it constantly. And like you said, we do have a lot more planned on what we're going to do. But we appreciate you sharing that with us.
Hey, no problem.
Is there anything that you would tell a new agent who's coming in now? Like, what kind of
like tips you'd give a new agent?
A neophyte agent. I mean, a neophyte agent. I mean, one, I think I'd probably go through like showing them how to use the software. But I always say too, use the software, but when in doubt, still call. Like I've been doing this for 9 years. I have, the expertise. It's a great tool. But still call to get the third party validation just to make sure. Even in the call center, like I'm going over this stuff a lot with the agents to make sure that they're entering stuff right. Like I had one agent, he types in, the person had had diabetic neuropathy, but he typed in nephropathy, instead of, neuropathy, and it came back, nobody was going to take them, but maybe either a modified or something like that, when we could have gone RNA. And I was like, what are the medications? Oh, gabapentin's neuropathy. You clicked on the wrong thing. That's why. So it's also it's just validation, because you're still adding the human element to it.
And that's why I always call it, it's a a tool, not a crutch. We don't want people to be, I mean, if you want to be great, you'll still do well, but we want people to learn just earlier today, Mark was doing an application. He checked American Amicable graded, but when he got to the application, he checked no to all the questions, because that's just what he's used to applying for immediate. So the human error stuff, I think you can never really eliminate completely, but at least we try to do our best to dial it back. But you're right. You should always, if you have an upline, if you have a manager, you have always communicate. Don't try to think that people are ever invaluable. We're just trying to help you out and be a little bit more efficient. Hopefully a lot more efficient. But yeah, I definitely agree that you can never get rid of the human element, especially with underwriting the way it is in these cases. So.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that's basically all we have for today. So we want to thank you guys and Josh for joining us for episode 2. We'll probably put out another episode. We'll try to do it by the end of this month. And of course, if you guys have any comments or suggestions for us, you can leave us a comment, send us an email. You can email us at, my email personally is joe@fextoolkit.com. Other than that, Josh, we really appreciate you joining us, and we hope to see you guys in a few weeks.
All right.
Thanks, Josh.